June 17, 1949. The Cotton Club, Harlem. A KKK Grand Dragon named Theodore Walsh walks straight up to Bumpy Johnson at his own table. Walsh spits on Bumpy's shoes. Then he says 6 words that would seal his fate. "Your kind don't belong here, boy." Every eye in the room freezes. 240 people stop breathing. Because nobody disrespects Bumpy Johnson and lives to tell about it. Walsh keeps smiling. He's wearing his white suit, 3-piece, pressed perfect. His 5 bodyguards stand behind him, hands on their guns. He thinks the suit makes him untouchable. He thinks being white in 1949 makes him untouchable. He's about to learn different. Bumpy doesn't move. Doesn't blink. Just sits there, cutting his steak, slow and steady. The knife scrapes against the plate. That sound is the only thing anyone hears. Walsh laughs loud, turns to his men. See? They know their place. He walks out like he owns Harlem itself. But here's what nobody understands yet. Bumpy Johnson didn't build his empire by reacting. He built it by thinking. Always 5 moves ahead. Always patient. Always lethal. The Cotton Club empties fast. Musicians pack their instruments. Waiters clear tables without making noise. Everyone knows what's coming. When Bumpy gets quiet, people die. When Bumpy gets insulted, neighborhoods burn. But when Bumpy gets insulted and stays quiet, that's when legends are born. Malcolm Turner, the club owner, approaches Bumpy's table. His hands shake. "Mr. Johnson, I'll ban him. He'll never step foot." Bumpy raises one finger. Malcolm stops talking mid-sentence. "How many blocks can you hear a gunshot from?" Bumpy asks. Malcolm swallows hard. 3, maybe 4 on a quiet night. Bumpy nods once. Just once. Malcolm understands everything. He leaves. If you want the full truth about what happened next, hit like so this story reaches more people who need to understand how power really works. Theodore Walsh wasn't just some random racist. He ran the entire Northeast operations for the KKK. 15,000 members answered to him. Politicians paid him. Police captains took his orders. He controlled city contracts worth $2 million. In 1949, that's serious money. The kind of money that makes men think they're gods. Walsh had been moving into Harlem for 3 months. Buying properties. Pressuring black business owners. Making threats. Burning crosses on lawns. The NYPD did nothing. The mayor's office did nothing. Because Walsh had connections that went all the way to Washington, D.C. He thought he was invincible. He thought Harlem would bow down like every other neighborhood had. But Harlem wasn't every other neighborhood. Harlem had Bumpy Johnson. Here's what you need to understand about Bumpy. He didn't just run numbers and protection. He built a community. Every grandmother on Lenox Avenue knew his name. Every kid playing stickball got $1 from him. Every church got donations. Every family that couldn't pay rent got help. 40,000 people would die for Bumpy Johnson. Walsh was about to find out exactly what that meant. 2 weeks before the Cotton Club incident, Walsh made his first mistake. He firebombed a church on 125th Street. St. Mary's Baptist. 300 years of history. Gone. Reverend Powell called Bumpy that same night. "They're trying to break us." Bumpy's response was simple. Nobody breaks Harlem. 1 week before the Cotton Club, Walsh made his second mistake. He beat up Marcus Reed, a numbers runner who worked for Bumpy. Broke both his legs with a baseball bat. Left him in the street. The message was clear. Walsh wanted war. He wanted Bumpy to react with violence. Then the police would have an excuse to destroy Bumpy's entire operation. But Bumpy didn't give him what he wanted. Instead, Bumpy watched. Studied. Learned Walsh's patterns. Where he went. Who he met. What time he left his meetings. How many guards he traveled with. Which routes he took. Bumpy collected information like other men collected money. 3 days before the Cotton Club, Walsh made his third and final mistake. He told a reporter from the Amsterdam News, "Bumpy Johnson is finished. That era is over. White America is taking Harlem back, 1 block at a time." The interview ran on the front page. Every black household in New York City read those words. The disrespect went beyond Bumpy now. It became about pride. About dignity. About survival. Comment justice if you believe Walsh deserved what was coming to him. The night of June 17th starts normal enough. Walsh finishes a city council meeting at 8 p.m. He's celebrating a new construction contract he just secured. $2 million to build low-income housing in Harlem. Everyone knows those contracts mean destroying black neighborhoods to build white ones. Walsh is feeling powerful, untouchable, invincible. He decides to celebrate at the Cotton Club. Because he can. Because he wants to rub it in. Because humiliating Bumpy Johnson in his own territory is the ultimate power move. Walsh brings 5 bodyguards, all carrying guns. All former police officers. All ready for trouble. They walk in at 9:15 p.m. The band is playing Duke Ellington. Couples are dancing. Drinks are flowing. Walsh spots Bumpy at his usual corner table. That table where everyone knows not to disturb the king of Harlem. Walsh walks straight over. No hesitation. No fear. Just arrogance. That's when he spits on Bumpy's shoes. That's when he says those 6 words, "Your kind don't belong here, boy." That's when the entire club goes silent. Because everyone recognizes this moment. This is history happening in real time. This is the moment that will be talked about for generations. But Bumpy doesn't react. Doesn't stand up. Doesn't pull a gun. Just keeps cutting his steak. The knife scrapes the plate. Frit, frit, frit. That sound becomes the heartbeat of the room. Every scrape is a countdown. Every scrape is a death sentence being written. Walsh laughs because he doesn't understand. He's already dead. He just doesn't know it yet. Walsh leaves at 9:23 p.m. 8 minutes inside the Cotton Club. 8 minutes that signed his death warrant. His Cadillac is parked 2 blocks away on Lenox Avenue. He's walking with his 5 guards. Laughing. Talking about how he just disrespected the so-called king of Harlem. How nobody did anything. How Harlem is weak. How black people are weak. How they're taking over the entire city by next year. They reach the Cadillac at 9:31 p.m. Walsh opens the driver's door. That's when he hears it. A whistle. One long whistle that echoes down Lenox Avenue. Then another. From the opposite direction. Then another. Then 20 more. Then 100 more. People are whistling. Standing on stoops. Leaning out windows. Walking out of shops. Appearing from alleys. Women. Elderly folks. Teenagers. Even children. All whistling. No words. No violence. Just whistling. The same tune. Over and over. A funeral march. Walsh looks around. His guards reach for their guns. Put those away, Walsh snaps. They're not doing anything illegal. But his voice shakes now. Because he's starting to understand. Starting to feel something he hasn't felt in years. The whistling gets louder. More people join. The sound bounces off buildings. Fills the street. Becomes a physical force. Walsh can feel it in his chest. His guards are sweating. Looking at each other. They've been in fights. They've been in shootouts. But they've never experienced anything like this. Type yes if you want to see what happened when those 3 blocks went completely silent. Then someone turns off a streetlight. Then another. Then another. One by one, every light on Lenox Avenue goes dark. The whistling continues. But now it's in darkness. Walsh can't see faces anymore. Just shapes. Hundreds of shapes. Surrounding them. Not moving. Not attacking. Just standing there. Whistling. Walsh tries to start the car. His hands shake. The key misses the ignition twice. 3 times. Finally, the engine turns over. His guards pile in fast. Real fast. These are men who fought in World War II. These are men who've killed before. But they're terrified right now. Because an enemy you can fight is one thing. An entire neighborhood that's become one organism is something completely different. The Cadillac pulls away. But the whistling follows. People on the next block pick it up. Same funeral march. Same rhythm. More lights go out. Walsh drives faster. The whistling continues. 3rd block. Same thing. People standing silent except for that whistle. That damned whistle that's drilling into his skull. Walsh makes it 4 blocks. The whistling stops. Suddenly. All at once. Like someone cut a wire. Complete silence. No car sounds. No voices. No music from clubs. Nothing. The silence is louder than the whistling was. That's when Walsh realizes something. Bumpy Johnson didn't need guns. Didn't need violence. Didn't need to break any laws. He just needed to show Walsh exactly how many people he'd disrespected. How many people were ready to act if Bumpy gave the word. How isolated and powerless Walsh really was. One man in a white suit versus an entire community united. That's not a fair fight. That's not even a fight at all. That's a lesson. But Walsh is arrogant. Walsh is stupid. Walsh thinks he survived. He tells his guards, "See? Nothing happened. They're all talk." He drives to his hotel. The Waldorf Astoria. Where white power still rules. Where he's safe. Or so he thinks. Here's what nobody knows yet. What even Walsh doesn't know. Bumpy made 3 phone calls while Walsh was driving. Just 3 calls. Each under 30 seconds. The first call went to a reporter at the New York Times. The second went to a city council member who owed Bumpy a favor. The third went to an FBI agent who'd been investigating KKK activities. Bumpy didn't need violence. He had something more powerful. Information. Remember when I said Bumpy spent weeks studying Walsh? Learning his patterns? Bumpy discovered something interesting. Walsh was stealing from his own KKK organization. Skimming money off those construction contracts. $200,000 over 6 months. His KKK superiors didn't know. But Bumpy did. Bumpy had receipts. Bank statements. Signed documents. Everything. Share this video so more people understand how real power works in the shadows. June 18, 1949. The next morning, the New York Times runs a front-page story, KKK leader embezzles funds, FBI investigation underway. Complete with documentation. Photos of bank statements. Testimony from witnesses who suddenly felt brave enough to talk. The FBI raids Walsh's hotel room at 6 a.m. They find cash. Lots of cash. $215,000 hidden in suitcases. All marked bills that trace back to KKK construction funds. Walsh is arrested. Charged with embezzlement. Racketeering. His own organization turns on him fast. Nobody wants to be associated with a thief. The KKK expels him. Publicly. Humiliatingly. They take out ads in newspapers denouncing him. His political connections vanish overnight. The mayor's office claims they never knew him. The police captains suddenly can't remember his name. Within 48 hours, Theodore Walsh goes from untouchable Grand Dragon to federal prisoner. His bail is set at $500,000. Nobody pays it. Not his KKK brothers. Not his political friends. Not his business partners. He sits in jail alone. Abandoned. Destroyed. But here's the thing that makes this legendary. Walsh never gets touched. No violence. No threats. No illegal activity that can be traced to Bumpy. Everything is legal. Everything is documented. Everything goes through proper channels. The FBI investigation is legitimate. The evidence is real. Walsh genuinely was stealing. Bumpy just helped the truth come to light. That's genius-level strategy. That's chess while everyone else is playing checkers. That's why Bumpy Johnson wasn't just a gangster. He was a tactician. A community organizer. A man who understood that real power isn't about who has the most guns. It's about who has the most people willing to stand with you. The Cotton Club becomes a shrine. People visit that table where Bumpy sat. Where he kept cutting his steak while Walsh spat on his shoes. Tour guides tell the story. Musicians write songs about it. Poets compose verses about it. The night Harlem stood together becomes legend. But the real lesson happens 3 weeks later. Walsh's trial starts. Bumpy attends. Sits in the back row. Wearing his best suit. Walsh sees him. Their eyes meet. Walsh understands everything in that moment. The whistling wasn't a threat. It was a message. You're alone. I'm never alone. That's the difference between us. Walsh gets sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. He serves 12. When he gets out in 1961, Harlem has changed. The civil rights movement is building power. The KKK's influence is fading. And Bumpy Johnson is still there. Still running Harlem. Still protecting his community. Still thinking 5 moves ahead. If this shocked you, comment legend below so I know you understand what really happened that night. The story spreads beyond New York. Detroit hears about it. Chicago. Philadelphia. Los Angeles. Every black neighborhood in America hears about the night Bumpy Johnson made 3 blocks go silent. No shots fired. No blood spilled. No martyrs created. Just pure, calculated, devastating power. Other KKK leaders take notice. They stop targeting Harlem directly. They try other neighborhoods, other cities, but not Harlem. Because Harlem has something they can't defeat. Unity. Community. And a leader who understands that violence is the weakest form of power. Information, strategy, and 40,000 people standing together? That's unstoppable. Malcolm Turner, the Cotton Club owner, frames the newspaper article about Walsh's arrest. Hangs it right next to the entrance. Under it, a small plaque. The night Harlem stood together. June 17, 1949. Tourists ask about it. Locals tell the story. The legend grows. Bumpy never talks about it publicly. When reporters ask, he says, "I don't know what you're talking about. I was just having dinner." But everyone knows. Everyone understands. That's the other genius move. By not claiming credit, Bumpy makes it bigger than himself. It becomes Harlem's story. The community's story. Proof that they can defend themselves without becoming the villains in white America's newspapers. The FBI agent who arrested Walsh gets promoted. The city council member who helped gets re-elected. The New York Times reporter wins an award. Everyone who helped Bumpy gets rewarded. That's how you build a network. That's how you create loyalty. You make sure everyone wins when they stand with you. 5 years later, in 1954, when Brown versus Board of Education is decided, many historians point to moments like this. Moments when black communities showed they could organize, could act with precision, could defeat powerful enemies without violence. The civil rights movement learned lessons from men like Bumpy Johnson, even if they'd never admit it publicly. Theodore Walsh dies in prison in 1963. Heart attack. Alone. No visitors in his final days. No funeral attended by more than 6 people. Forgotten. Erased from history. Meanwhile, Bumpy Johnson becomes a legend that lasts generations. Movies are made about him. Books are written. Grandchildren tell their grandchildren about the King of Harlem. That's the real ending. Not the dramatic shootout. Not the violent revenge. But the systematic, intelligent, complete destruction of an enemy who thought skin color made him superior. Walsh learned what many others have learned. Power isn't about what you can do to people. It's about what people are willing to do for you. 347 people stood on those 3 blocks that night. Each one could have stayed inside. Could have been scared. Could have thought their individual presence didn't matter. But they came out. They whistled. They turned off lights. They became one force. That's what terrified Walsh. Not Bumpy. The community. Here's what you need to take away from this story. Bumpy Johnson won because he invested in people. He helped grandmothers pay rent. He gave kids hope. He supported churches. He built relationships. So when the moment came, when he needed his community, they showed up. No questions asked. No payment required. Just loyalty. Just love. Just respect. That's why the story matters 77 years later. That's why we're still talking about it. Not because of violence. Not because of revenge. But because it shows what's possible when a community stands together. When they trust their leader. When they're willing to act without knowing the full plan. Walsh walked into the Cotton Club thinking power came from his white suit, his political connections, his money, his guns. He walked out having learned that real power comes from the number of people who'd stand in the dark for you. Who'd whistle a funeral march for you. Who'd turn off their lights for you. Who'd show up when you need them. Bumpy never fired a shot that night. Never made a threat. Never broke a law. He just showed Walsh that he was playing a completely different game. A game Walsh couldn't understand. A game where community beats money. where unity beats guns, where intelligence beats violence. Every single time. Like this video if you understand why this story matters. Comment below, what would you do if you had 40,000 people ready to stand with you? Subscribe because more legendary stories are coming, and you need to understand how real power is built from the ground up, one relationship at a time, one act of respect at a time, one moment of standing together when everyone else expects you to stand alone. Because that's not just Bumpy Johnson's story. That's the story of every community that ever survived when the world said they shouldn't. That's the story of Harlem. That's the story of resilience. That's the story of power that doesn't need guns because it has something better. It has people.